The way of a Swan Priestess has nothing to do with dogma or following a particular prescribed religious or spiritual group. Rather, it is a deep opening into your most natural, authentic self, bridging your humanity and divinity as one, and allowing one's fullest gifts and unique expression and embodiment of the sacred feminine. The Swan Priestess embodies the fullness of the integration of 7 sacred feminine archetypes. This integration is a sacred journey into profound healing through gently letting go of layers of negative belief systems to be able to fully integrate the ancient, loving gifts and wisdom of the sacred feminine, to allow for the natural wholeness of who you innately are. The way of a Swan Priestess is a naturally loving and peaceful state of being that is inherent in the human condition. This state of being is deeply sacred and healing to your own self and others. And it is inherent within all of us. It resides within the sacred heart and a deep, loving connection to the body. The Swan Priestess path is as unique, individual, and sacred as each priestess herself. As a mentor of Swan Priestesses, I serve as a loving support to allow for the light of truth to be shown, uncovering the hidden gems and spiritual gifts that one holds naturally within. This is a precious unfolding in one's own unique way of sharing the gifts and calling to be a priestess that is inherent in her unique expression of who she naturally is. This is a gentle yet powerful process where allowing our gifts to be unwrapped, seen, and understood allows us to be in integrity with our spiritual selves and to share our loving gifts in service for our own lives, for others, and for the world. We can compassionately unveil the unconscious and transform ourselves into our ever-emerging spiritual essence through the grace of becoming one with our own inner swan. As a Swan Priestess, you are called into your purest nature of spirit, connected with your body, mind, spirit, and heart as one. From this place of embodied wisdom and wholeness, you can serve others in natural mentorship, in loving ceremony, and in compassionate, open support. This way of leadership calls us back into the remembrance of the innate sacred wholeness that we naturally are, and honors the loving wisdom that lies within each and every one of us. As a Swan Priestess, you are invited to lead through an infallibly graceful, loving strength from within throughout all of the transformational gifts life brings. Swan Spirit is known for her ability to resurrect and transform with grace. She receives her swan wings after a completed descent that allows for a natural resurrection into a new, more enlightened way of being. A creature of both water and air, Swan Spirit is able to alchemize emotions, grief, and trauma into spiritual wisdom and rebirth. She's connected to the spirit of the light and is a wisdom keeper of the cycles of death and rebirth. She is what gives us strength and courage in the most difficult of times. The Swan Priestess is connected to her intuition through the connection to her body, heart, mind, and spirit as one. She is deeply connected to nature as one with herself, and nature is her oracle. She's able to connect to the eternal wisdom that the natural world offers us throughout life. She honors nature as sacred. As a Swan Priestess, you are invited to marry the masculine and feminine as loving support to one another. You hold space for the illusion of separation to be healed into wholeness within. Swans, as both black and white, represent the importance of marrying the opposites within as one. Holding the wisdom of the heavens and underworld, consciousness and unconscious, they hold and support another as one. This union of opposites allow the natural wholeness and joyful peacefulness that is inherent within all of us. As a Swan Priestess, you are an expression and embodiment of the ancient love goddess with all of her gifts and graces. Swan's beauty symbolizes love goddess gifts of magnetism and tender self-acceptance, making it sacred to her. As a Swan Priestess, you hold the ancient wisdom and keys to passionate love and devoted partnership within your essence. You can share and inspire this often forgotten wisdom of the ancient love goddess to assist others in devoted partnership. As a Swan Priestess, you are invited to be a keeper of the wisdom of the sacredness of awakened sensuality. As revered in our ancient past as ladies of the lake and water priestesses, Swan Priestesses are centrally awakened. They understood that our bodies and pleasure are sacred and one with the divine. They knew their extraordinary healing gifts. In this state of experiencing the sacredness of our bodies, we can experience heaven on earth in varying ecstatic states of pleasure within our everyday lives. In the Celtic Grail tradition, it was honored that a Grail quest is initiated in order to free the waters and allow the sensual waters of the sacred feminine to flow and bless the land. In these traditions, ladies of the lake and mermaids represented the sacred primordial feminine essence and are deeply connected to the Swan Priestess. As a Swan Priestess, you can understand and embody enlightenment from the perspective of the sacred feminine. Like the oldest goddess of India, Saraswati, also known as the Mother of God, is named She Who Flows. She is considered the queen of the mermaids, is also a lady of the lake, and revered as a Swan Priestess. In Indian lore, the sacred swan is named Hamasa, which is regarded as the highest form of feminine enlightenment and the primordial merging with love as light, the heavens and unconsciousness, and the dark as the rich unconsciousness, primordial and underworld, together as one. The swan spirit is often revered as the merging of this primordial and divine, and represents this with its primordial snake-like neck and the wings of heaven. As a Swan Priestess, you are invited to become a priestess through your own becoming. Like the story of the ugly duckling, you are not ordained by another, but come into the beauty of your true nature through your own deep transformation and awakening to your innate inner wisdom. This is a path where you can discover the gems of the eternal, unconditional love that lies within you. Having experienced and known this for yourself, you can hold the space for the same natural transformation to support others into becoming of their own inner swan, if and when they are ready or desiring. A Swan Priestess is not forced, but allows the natural becoming in a surrendered state in humility and trust of the loving universe. Embodying true leadership is to guide another back into herself, so one can seek the answers within her own being. The Swan Priestess inspires and mentors others to find their own spiritual teacher, the sense of wisdom and intuition within their own body, heart, and soul connection. Like the ugly duckling, Swan Spirit needs to go out on her own, without fitting into a group, and discover her own strengths and light within, as her uniqueness and her own connection to Spirit holds the key to her greatest gifts to give. Being true to herself and knowing that she is one with all of life, that will innately have a purpose and a part, she can feel a true sense of belonging to the great all. The Swan Priestess is not a goal or perfection to reach. She's deeply connected to self-acceptance and loving self-compassion, and she knows this as the greatest alchemy of healing. The Swan Priestess, like the swan, is fully human and divine as one, and recognizes this as such. She does not need to feel above others, but knows deeply and reveres the sacredness of all of life, and the importance in and the interconnectedness of everything. A Swan Priestess is one within her own self and respects deeply the divinity within all other beings. The Swan Priestess knows that we are all in process. We are always in a natural rebirth cyclical progression of becoming. We are all created with worth and are inherently sacred and unique in our own special ways. The only difference in the path of a Swan Priestess and that of another is in her awareness of the sacredness of all of life, her ability to bridge the light and dark within, and her courage and devotion to divine love and all it naturally gifts and transpires through us. The Swan Priestess surrenders to the Great Spirit in trust and applies the connected inner wisdom and grace of her priestess path, especially at life's most challenging moments of rebirth. The Swan Priestess, alike Swan Spirit, is an artist healer. She uses art to naturally inspire, express, and communicate her human experience and transcend her pain to create wholeness within. Through the natural flow of artful expression, supporting this process with loving compassion, she's able to help heal herself and her community. In Greek and Celtic mythology, the swan is the symbol of the muses, who offer creative vision for poets and artists. Goddess Bridget is associated with swans and ruled over poetry, writing, inspiration, and music. As a Swan Priestess, you may feel called to assist others as an end-of-life doula, supporting a person during the dying process. Swans are associated throughout many cultures as being connected to the divine and heavens as both the bringer of life and aiding in the return to oneness at death. Symbolic as the migration of the soul, swans were considered conductors of souls at birth and death. A Swan Priestess may hold loving space, compassion, deep listening, and support for the dying and for the grief of their family and loved ones. She may hold ceremony for the dying before and after their death. Represented in the constellation of Cygnus, the swan was revered by the ancients as the gateway of the soul into the afterlife. As death is not an endpoint, but a point of transformation, the Swan Priestess can help others birth back into oneness, back into the great cosmic womb. Supporting the dying through the deep, compassionate listening, holding loving space for them to work through their fears, and letting go of their earthly attachments allows them to move through their transition gracefully, joyfully, and peacefully. Here, Goddess Bridget shines her grace and support again, celebrated in St. Bride's Day and in Block on the 1st of February, and the first sign of spring marked by the departure of swans, carrying the souls of the newly dead toward a northernly placed heaven among the stars of Cygnus, which means swan in Latin. As a Swan Priestess, you may conduct and hold ceremonies to celebrate all stages of life. In a loving role as light holder, a Swan Priestess can create sacred ceremony for the celebrations and transitions of life. Rites of passage hold immense importance for the human soul, and a Swan Priestess ripe in the reverence of life's transitions can create rich, meaningful, and healing ceremonies, rites of passage, and celebrations for her community. She also holds the healing power of sun, which is eternal love, and water as life itself. And this can be reflected in loving, healing ceremony that holds water as sacred. Swan spirit is known to be able to shapeshift, and myths of swans and lake maidens turning into goddesses and fairies are plentiful. Thus, the swan spirit connects to spirit and the other world, bringing their blessed gifts, support, wisdom, and messages into spiritual mentorship and peaceful ceremony to bless, inspire, and celebrate life's transitions and rites of passage. As a Swan Priestess, you may hold loving and compassionate circles for healing, keeping the container pure, loving, and safe. A Swan Priestess may organize, guide, and hold sacred moon circles for healing for women and girls coming of age. If you feel the calling to become a Swan Priestess or would like to learn more about this unique, gentle, and transformative one-on-one training program or Swan Priestess mentorship, please visit swanpriestess.com.